Alright guys, welcome back. Mechanized IT here again with an updated tutorial since I updated a lot of the blocks in my mod pack. There's a lot of new blocks that people don't really know what they're for and don't know how to use, so I'm going to try to go over those things as quickly as possible. First thing is a shaft with a small gear. This is a rotor. The shaft in the middle is like the bottom part of the rotor and the gear is the top part. It has torque and braking, so you can set those if you like. It has twice the amount of torque as a regular rotor, so you don't need to use rotors if you're using the shaft with the small gear, because it'll turn on its own as long as it has power. And I added the gear that goes on that rotor, just like this is the top part of the rotor. If anybody has an application for that, it will attach back to the shaft if you push it on, just like pushing the top part of the rotor back into the rotor. Then I also added a regular gear back without a shaft hole, so you can just mount this onto rotors if you want. It has no special functions, it's just a block that acts as a gear. One thing to note is that the small gear that goes on the shaft is slightly narrower, height-wise I mean, than the regular gear, so that the shaft sticks out of both ends of the gear a little bit. So you could run this between two blocks just like a blast door. This one is the top part and the bottom part of this gear is the same width as a regular block. Next we have the blank rack. It's basically a rack without teeth. It's the same width as a normal block. It has a monorail cut out in the bottom. It has mount points on all the sides except for the bottom. You would use this with the monorail and you would attach to all different sides. I don't know what kind of applications right off mine, but um, you could make sliding platforms or hangar doors and stuff like that. The next thing is the same thing as this, only it's about the width of a blast door, exactly the same width. It mounts on the top and the front and back, but not the sides, just like blast doors. And the monorail cutout is on the bottom. The difference over here with this block is that the cutout for the monorail is on the side instead of the bottom. That way you can have a wall right here and a wall of blast doors, blocks, and they would slide adjacent to each other. In this, you would have like a floor with a monorail on it, or a wall down here with a monorail on the top, and this piece up here would slide. Next I have a blast gear wreck monorail version with the monorail cutout on the side. Basically that's the only place I would put the cutout, because if you put it on the bottom, you're not going to be able to connect to the bottom of this block and it wouldn't really serve much purpose, so it's on the side. And then it is the same width as a blast door, just like the blast rack over here. Then we have the monorail, which goes with these four blocks here. It has a landing gear function, so you can lock whatever is attached to it in place, like a door, on your ship if you don't want it to be free to bang around while you're flying around. So that's pretty basic block. I'll show you how to put those together in a minute. We have the same blocks here, nothing changed with these. The hinges are kind of crap right now. I want to make those into rotors just like the chains so that they will work much better. Right now they work on collisions. There's a little pin here, and basically you have to, if you watch my last video, you'll know how to use those. So yeah, I'm not going to go over these. I'm going to change those probably maybe in the next update or two rotors, just like the chain blocks are. Okay, then we'll go over to the medium gear. This is the center part of the medium gear. It now has a shaft in it just like the small gear, and so it will spin. It has torque and braking. This is the part that goes onto the shaft if you want to use that. This is a blank medium gear center part. It has no special functions, it's just a block, so you could attach it to rotors. And then the thing I changed about the sides and the corners is that they're slightly narrower. They're about so they will fit between two blocks if you want to run a gear between two sets of blocks. And then next, I changed the spindle assembly since the last video. Right now it is a rotor. Before, it relied on collisions to connect the hub to the spindle, which was, terrible. Since I changed it to a rotor, it now places the hub when you place the spindle block. Okay, so you don't have to put the hub down. It's still offset for some reasons I'll talk about in a little bit. But next we have the spindle with a blast hub rail. This is to alleviate catching with these rails and these racks. Normally you'd have the blast rail on both sides of this rack, and instead of that you would put the spindle with the blast rail hub, and that alleviates the catching because the hub will spin instead of catch on the rack. So that's a lot better than using the rails, in my opinion. Here we just have the hub, which is the top rotor part of this spindle assembly, and then we have this other hub, which is the top part. Something new I added that wasn't in the last video are spring cylinder and spring rod. They are kind of just an experiment. It's not really applicable for most people. I might play with this more in the future, but I will show you kind of how it works and how to build it. There's nothing changed. Well, there is a little something changed. I think I added torque and power to the chain link so that you could, if you wanted to build a chain and then freeze it so that it doesn't move around, so you could actually attach a landing gear to it with a moving ship. You could move it and not have to worry about it losing its shape and flopping around all over the place. That's the only difference. Track sprocket is the same. I added the sprocket with suspension, so this is like a wheel suspension that comes with the sprocket attached, so that you don't have to use rotors and set up the controls for all the rotors. I added a different sprocket. This is a 6-tooth sprocket, and it better aligns with the track chain, so it's a better mesh. This one has a different length between teeth than the chain does between the two pins, so that it doesn't line up exactly. It doesn't mesh very well. So whenever you try to use a chain tensioner and get it tight, you'll have some binding happening. So this is a much better. It's harder to build around because there's a tooth sticking out the side, so whenever you go to build down around it, it gets in the way. So what I do is I just build a chain straight out as far as I think I'll need, and then I get a ship and I grab onto it and I move and wrap around instead of building all the way around it. So it's a little bit harder to build with. Okay, next, the trackpad hasn't changed much. I added landing gear feature so that maybe you could use it without gravity. It's not particularly working that well for me, and I tried to make a tank that didn't need gravity, so it would just attach to the surface. But I'll continue to play around with that and see if I can get that to work, because that would be a neat feature, I think. And one thing to note, there are a few guys who are doing some modeling with me. GC Voss, he has made some Army trackpads that I might release in the next update, so you can look for that. So let's build a monorail system really quickly. Let me grab the blocks that I need. Let's just grab all of these, and let's grab that while we're at it. And you'll notice I have much better resolution, but my frame rate is terrible, so I apologize for that. Basically, just lay down some monorails like this. They'll attach on the ends, like right here. They'll attach on their bottoms, but they won't attach on the top or the sides. So we're just going to lay out a big long line of them about as far as we can see. If I can get it just, there we go, 100's pretty good. Now the biggest problem that people are having, I think, is getting a monorail block attached to this monorail, because whenever I take this, you can't place it in the same bounding box area that I place the monorail. So what you have to do is place it on a new ship in order to place it there. And the easiest way to do that, actually let me grab a rotor. The easiest way is to use a rotor or a piston, and just because whenever you place a rotor, let me note something for everyone right here. This is a station. All these are station blocks that I'm building off of. That means they are not free to move in space. I know I talked about this in the last video, but some people might not have seen that. When I first started playing Space Engineers, one of the first things I found out about space stations that was a little bit unexpected was I thought that, yeah, they're immovable, but whenever I remove this block, this would become free to move, but it's not. And so a lot of people are having trouble with my mod where they'll free up the block and it won't move, and they won't know why. That's because it's still a station block. If you built it off of a station, it's still a station block. Okay? And the easiest way to change it to a ship is just to grab a control panel and put it on there and convert it to a ship. Alright guys, sorry I'm back. I got kids running around me screaming, so I apologize for all the interruptions. But yeah, I converted this block to ship. Now it's free to move, so be sure to do that if you're building off of a station. Otherwise, your block's not going to move. And the easiest way to do that without converting it to ship is use a rotor block, because the bottom part of the rotor is still a station, but the top part is actually free to move, and it is a ship grid. So if you attach that, your block will automatically be a ship. So let's build off of this rotor. You'll notice now that I can place it, even though it's overlapping the monorail a little bit, it's still placeable. So what I'm placing right now is the blank rack, which is the same size as a regular block. Let's put down a couple of these, and you'll notice they're a little bit narrower. Let's put down some of these. You notice they're narrower height-wise, and then last we'll put down. So these are all the blocks that attach to the monorail, just like that. Okay, so those are all attached to the monorail. I mean, they're not attached; they're sitting on it, and they can't. They'll have to follow the monorail to move. So let's remove that. We don't need that. Let's throw some power in a thruster, and maybe one of these gyroscopes. Let me do that again. So that I can show you that it actually works. Okay, we got a seat. Now power, gyro for stability, and a thruster, and a forward thruster for stopping purposes. Well, come on. There we go. Now, you'll hear some banging because these monorails do catch, and I'll tell you right now, until the devs maybe introduce a different definition into the game of linear motion between two blocks. Right now they have, the pistons, but if you build something like a piston, it's going to be all attached. Even though it moves linearly up and down, you couldn't make a monorail system. So I'm guessing, since they have a monorail type block in the files, but not in the game yet, I'm thinking they're going to do that sometime in the future. So you'll hear all of the banging, and no matter what I do with the collision blocks, it's going to catch on the monorail. There's no getting around it at this point. But the good thing is, it's not doing any damage to the blocks because I changed the components for all my blocks, and I'll talk about that in a second. The component I added is HSLA steel plate, which all of my blocks require instead of regular steel plates, and they are about 20 times lighter and about 10 times stronger than steel plates. So right now my blocks are about 10 times stronger than basic armor, light armor, but 20 times lighter. And the reason I did that is because even when I tried to make blocks much more durable by adding regular steel plates, by adding lots of them, it made them a lot heavier. And I guess in this game the collisions are based off of the damage is caused by the amount of mass and the velocity. So the more mass you have, the more damage they were causing each other, even though they were more durable. So that's why I had to do a custom component. Let me throw on a couple of big engines so we can go fast. I know this is eating up a little bit of time, but I kind of like this. It's you could make trains with these monorails, or you could make doors, or just moving platforms, or I don't know, whatever you can think of to use the system for. I haven't had much chance to play around with it myself because whenever I'm on here, I'm messing with the mods, and lately I haven't actually even been on very much because I've got a lot going on in the real world. Let's see how fast I can go with those. And they broke. Figures. That's something I'll have to work on in the future, like always. Durability. I think the biggest problem is actually the rack blocks. I think for some reason, because of the teeth, I had to do some funny things with the collision boxes to actually make it mesh up with the monorail. So if you don't use the rack with the teeth and you just use the blank rack, it slides really good actually, and it doesn't do any damage. I got it to full speed when I didn't use any of these other ones, and I was just using this without causing any damage at all. So yeah, I think it's the one with the teeth that is causing the most problems at the moment. We can try that out. We'll get rid of those. Who cares if it's too long? You can skip ahead. Let's just use the regular sized blank monorail version. And see how that works. Because unless they changed anything in the last update, it was working fine before. I had no problems, I had no blocks breaking, I was going full speed. Even though there was some collisions going on, there was no damage. But they may have changed the way damage works in the last update, and I don't know about it because I haven't really looked at it yet. We're at 30. Well, we're gonna run out of track. Even if we run off the track a little bit, we can go back on it if we line up right. Let's see. Alright, let's see if we can get full speed with one thruster before we run into the platform. Not quite. Pretty close. Alright, let's see if there's any damage. welder out. There's a little bit of damage to that one, but that one was already there. That might have been damaged before. Let's repair them. And we'll do another quick run and see if they're damaged after that. I'm kind of curious myself. I don't know. I thought they were working just fine, but the last update might have changed some things. T. I should be able to get closer to full speed with the two thrusters. Not quite. About 90, I think. Oh, there's no damage on that one. Or that one. Or that one. So yeah, I think it's just the one with the rack, or the one with the teeth right now that's causing the most problems with collisions with the monorail. So I'll note that, and I'll have to look at that whenever I work on the next update. So that is the main new feature, the blocks, the monorail blocks that I wanted to show. Real quick, what's next? Let's show the change with the spindle, because before the spindle was just the spindle bottom block and it was offset like that, and you'd place it and it'd just be the spindle, but now it has the hub. The hub is free to move. There's no power or torque with this block, even though it's a rotor. There's no displacement. All it does is spin. It's just a pivot point. If you want a cheap pivot point without using a rotor, then you don't mind the offset, then use that. One of the neat features about the offset is when you remove the hub, you can place the hub back down, and this is something you can't do with regular rotors. You can place it back down, and now it's not free to move because it is attached to the same station blocks as the spindle bottom part itself. So let me show you real fast with some regular blocks what the actual difference looks like. So you know, before with regular rotors you couldn't attach two rotors, the top parts of two rotors, to the same set of blocks. But now look at this. You have this bottom part of basically the stator part of the rotor and the top part, and they're all connected to the same ship. You're like, well, how is this useful for anything? You know how when you have a door, let's just do that. You know how like when you have a door and you want it to pivot, you know, like a regular swinging door, and you want to use rotors, and you want to use one on top and bottom, but you can't without merging the blocks to both of the rotors. Well, now, you know, you could do that now if the rotor was offset just like the spindle is. So, you know, there is a reason still for the offset, even though it seems really stupid. And I'll admit, it is pretty stupid. You know, I understand it looks ridiculous that it's offset and it's kind of hard to work with. So the actual bottom spindle part, the bounding box for that and its attachment is on this block back here. Okay, so we're going to remove the hub. Let's do it over here too. Got the hub. I'm going to remove it. Now we're going to put a hub back on, and we'll put a hub back on this one. And now we can build between them, and they are both attached to both hubs. So you can imagine that, you know, this was a swinging door, and you wanted to do this before with rotors. You wish they would just connect, but they won't. You have to use merge blocks, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But before this will spin, these hubs are still connected to the station, and they're actually station blocks. So if I remove this block underneath the hub, it will disconnect the hub from the station. Okay, let me remove this block so you can see. The hub is now disconnected. The spindle, which is the bottom part, is still connected to this block, which is still a station block. So it's still solid. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now this hub is no longer connected to anything but this door. Okay, but it's not free to spin because it's still a station block because it was connected to a station when I put it down. So we're going to take a control panel, throw it on there, and then we'll turn this into a ship. Just like that. And if you'll notice, you have these settings, which it's connected, it's just like a rotor, it'll pass power. So now we have, if we have power here on the station like we do, and we connect, we're not connected, we have to connect this up to the actual spindle because the spindle is connected to that block. So now it will pass power from the station through the spindles to the door if you have anything on the door that needs power. Let's, for instance, put a thruster on the side of this and make it move. Now you will see that I am connected. You'll see all the monorails because that's connected to the station. We have, where is it? Small thruster. Let's turn this on just a tiny bit and see. There you go. Now I hope that that makes sense to everyone what I'm talking about. I know it doesn't to everyone because not everyone really is concerned about using two sets of rotors on the same block. But you know, when I was trying to build some advanced mechanical things, the first problem I ran into was not being able to connect two rotors, the top parts of two rotors, onto the same set of blocks, which really limits what you can build in this game. And I understand the reasons behind it, but this is a fix for that. I could make another mod where I offset the basic rotor just the same as the spindle is offset, and then you could place the top part back down on the block and do the same thing you did here. But you know, I don't know if that would be very useful to anybody. If that'd be useful to you, I would be glad to do that. Okay, so those are the spindle changes. I know this is getting long. I've got a lot of stuff, and I ramble a lot, so I apologize. I could show you this. I think you get the basic idea. It's the same as this, but it has a rail hub. So you would set it up if you watched the last video. Well, actually, I think a lot of people said I didn't spend much time going over this, so I should probably do that. As much as I hate to, because this video is getting so long, I might have to split it up. Let's get these in this. We got that and that. And we'll still need this. And I know a lot of people want to know how to set this up, so I will just have to go over it. I need a regular block too. Okay. It makes it hard to build with this kind of frame rate also. So, I'm sorry if I'm slow. These blocks are where I'm going to put the rails on. I'm going to use the regular blast rails for now, and then I will change them out and put the spindle with the blast rail hub. I'm going to use the blast rack. And let's go as far as I can go. mess this up. This is what I'm going to put the gear on. Okay, now here's a quick chance to show you the shaft of the gear. A big problem people were having before is that the gear, when they were trying to place it on the rotor, wasn't lined up. We don't need that. Wasn't lined up with the rack, so they couldn't place it. So I told them to turn the rotor on and then wait for it to slowly spin and line up. If I'm right, I changed that. Yeah, so now it places automatically because I offset the gear. The original reason why I had the gear the way it was is so that you could place gears beside each other. See how they overlap like that? And you could place them in any orientation around and they would line up and you'd be able to place them, but that really isn't that important. And if you really want to do that, you can just turn it like that and you see the teeth line up. So I fixed that, but I don't want to use the rotor. I want to use my gear with shaft with gear, just like that. And if I give it power, it has power on the station, it'll move. So right now I need to place the rails. That looks right. I think it's right. Yeah. And one thing to notice about the rails is they do have landing gear functions as well, so you can lock the rack in place. And it also helps slide a little bit. It alleviates some of the drag that was happening just by having that function. Okay, now I have to, in this case we're building off a station. I want to remove this block, not that one, that one. And it looks like it's detached from the station. It looks like it should move, but it is still a station block. So let's put that on there and we'll turn it into a ship. Convert ship. Then remove that because we don't need it anymore. And we're going to make this long. Now, anybody who doesn't really understand what the point of this is, if you look, you can automatically see that you can see how long this rack is. If you try to do pistons to make linear motion that long, you'll run into a lot of problems. So that's one good thing if you're not really mechanically inclined. The good thing about rack and pinions, this is the pinion, the gear, and this is the rack, is that you can make linear motion from rotational motion, which is the gear, and you can go as far as you want to go. And you know, it just adds some functionality that the pistons were kind of lacking. Okay, it should be ready to move. I'll turn it on and we'll see if it catches on those rails, and I'll switch the rails out with the spindle part. If I can find it. Shaft with small gear. I'm going to turn the braking all the way up, and we want to go, let's go this way. I think it's longer that way. Alright, let's just watch. Let's see if it hangs up. It's moving pretty good. You know, I think I got it working better with the rails, but it's not perfect. It'll still catch from time to time, especially with the small ship. The small ship blocks are a pain in the butt to get to work right, because they're so small. There's so little wiggle room. Everything is so tight. Let's turn it all the way up. And you'll see it is catching, and it's just throwing sparks like crazy. Let's turn it off. Shaft. what I did just there is I pushed to bring that up, in case you don't know. Control left click on the slider, and Control A will select it all, and that way you can set exact values for rotors and things. Okay, so let's change out the rail with these rails. That's not right. The other way. Come on. I hate working with this kind of frame rate. I really need to get an actual desktop and not a laptop to play this game on. Okay, so unlike the spindles before in the last video, I don't have to do anything else. These are already, the hub is on and it will spin, as you can see. And I don't know why the gear's actually turning right now, because I turned it off. Let's turn it back on, see if we can get it to go to full speed. You can see there's a lot of sparks, but it's moving a lot faster. It's not like skipping over teeth like it was before. Let's see if there's any damage to the hub. And get up close to it. Okay, I'm back. I had another interruption to deal with, but it's settled, I think. So let's look at the hub. The hub, I'm clicking, and there's no damage on the hub, even though it's throwing a lot of sparks. Let's see if the rack is getting damaged. Doesn't appear to be, even though there's sparks. So I think changing the component, this doesn't have any damage, even though it was doing a lot of sparking and jumping gear teeth. So that I'm happy with. If it has sparks and noises and no damage, I'm fine with that. The damage is the worst part, because then they're unreliable. A little bit of damage over time would be okay, I guess, for realism, and maintenance purposes. Let's check out the custom component that I added. I added the HSLA steel plates, which is a machine grade steel. It requires cobalt, nickel, and iron. We'll throw those into the assembler, and now my plate looks the same as a regular steel plate, and I'm going to change that so that you can differentiate between the two much more easily. We'll just bake up 100 of them. See there, it says HSLA steel plate. Let's do 100 of those and cancel those. And then we'll go into inventory. We'll move one over. Because I want to show you the difference in weight. Do that again. Okay. Here's a regular steel plate. It's 20 kilograms per plate. This is 1 kilogram per plate. So 20 times lighter, 10 times stronger. If that's not enough for you guys, I can up the durability of my steel plates as well. So that's not a problem. Okay, we've gone over the spindle, we've gone over the monorail, we've gone over the new hub, the new gear. Let's see if I left anything out. Let's do the springs real fast. I say fast. Nothing seems to be fast in this game. We'll need that. We will need merge blocks, piston, in order to demonstrate this. That's what I'll need. Still need that, and we'll need, let's get a button panel. Where'd it go? It's way down here at the bottom for some reason. Let's go over here and put down a button panel. And I'm just setting up how I would demonstrate this. Okay, let's get like, I'll explain this in a second. We're going to use a piston to pull the spring rod back. I'm going to put a merge block on it. This is the easy way for me to demonstrate how the spring actually works. Okay, first, it doesn't really matter which one you place down first. I'm going to place down the cylinder. It connects, as you can see, the green bounding box. So in the files it's just a 1 by 1 by 1, even though it actually looks like a 2 by 1 block. So whenever I place it down, it's going to connect here, and it sticks out the back, the model does. And you can look in there and it looks like a spring inside, even though that's just for visual purposes. It's not actually a real spring. It doesn't move or do anything like that. Now the rod is the exact opposite. You can notice the bounding box is on the back side of it, so that it will place on this block behind where I placed the cylinder. So when I place that on that block, it looks like it's assembled, but it is still a station block. So I placed it on this block. What we want to do is free the rod up. And I placed it on this block, and it's connected to this block and only this block. So I'm going to disconnect that. Let's go ahead and put a merge block on it, and this, because we're going to turn this into a ship. So the rod needs to be changed into a ship, and so it can move, so it's not a station block anymore. Okay, now the rod is free to move in the cylinder. What I'm going to do is go over to my control panels, button panel, wherever it's at, and set these up for the piston. Let's do the merge block first. Yeah, this one. One of these buttons I'm going to set up to toggle this merge block on and off, and then one of them is going to be the piston, which is just going to reverse. Okay, where is piston? Now, okay, we're going to set the piston to, I think we want it to move almost one block, but not quite one full block. So 2.3 meters. And we're going to set the minimal to 1.3. So when it pulls the rod back, it will have a stroke of 1 meter. If you pull it back any further than 1 meter, it'll break the block. So let's see if, let me make sure this is right. It looks right. That will turn the merge block on and off. This will reverse the piston. And I think I actually did I do it right? Yes. Okay, now let's just pull the piston back, and you'll see that the rod moves in the cylinder. I know there's a lot of sparking. This is just an experimental block. It's not really useful for anything. at the moment. I'm just playing with collision boxes and trying to get a spring effect. So now to release it, we're just going to do that. And you see it springs forward. It's pretty simple. I don't know what you would use it for other than maybe a shock absorber. But the way it currently is, because the cylinder is attached at the front, you can see that the rod is flush with the block underneath it. So it needs to actually, this block needs to be back here so that it attaches to the back of the cylinder, and the rod needs to attach up here. But if you do that, then I can't attach a block to the back of the rod. It'll only attach to the front. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. If you have any ideas, let me know. I'm going to pull it back again. Maybe you could, maybe in the future, if this works good enough, you could put something in front of it and fire it or something. I don't know. It's just to play around with. It's not really that useful of a block. And there's the spring assembly. What else? I'm not going to show you, I don't think I'm going to show you anything else right now, because I think you know how suspensions work. It's the same with the sprockets, even though those are new. I kind of told you at the beginning of the video how to build a chain link around the new sprocket. So if you have any problems with building tracks, look at my other video. One thing to remember, I think people are having trouble with, is they're not pointing right at the pin when they're trying to place it, and instead they're just placing it on blocks that are behind the track. If you do that, these aren't going to be connected because they are rotors. Alright guys, I think that's about it for this video. It is terribly long. If you have any other requests, I will try to make other videos. Maybe if you want me to make a short video on a specific block and a specific application, I'll try to do that. Okay? Good luck. See you guys later.